Welcome to one of my technical talks where I'm going to be talking about why I do the sort of training that I do and why I eat the way I do as well. I want you to note I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so please, if you are going to change any of these things, please do consult them. I have developed this over the last 5 years. I've been thinking about it, been doing a lot of research into it, and I've been training this way. It increased my marathon time last year. I dropped 15 minutes off my marathon personal best time. And I think this year I'm going to do even more, I hope. Okay, so why do I train the way I do? So I'm going to be talking about your aerobic system, which is utilizes fat oxidation. And I want to be in fat oxidation using fat as fuel. And then I also want to be talking about your your anaerobic system, which is your glucose utilization in your muscles. That helps you go fast and increases your speed. So zone 1 to 3, which are these zones here, develop your aerobic system. Zone 4 to 5, develop your anaerobic system. Zone 2 is where you use majority of fat oxidation. So this is your best spot to develop burning fat. Zone 5 is where you use maximum glucose as fuel and not fats. So this is your high performance and speed. So best place to develop your speed and performance. Zone 3 and 4 are sort of a mix between the two. Zone 3, mostly fat, but quite a bit of sugar. Zone 4, mostly sugar, but quite a bit of fat. Okay, so to maximize your fat oxidation and increase your oxidation ability, is zone 2 is ideal for this. So like a muscle, if I'm exercising a muscle, if I want my biceps to grow, I can do bench pressures and all sorts of things, but the thing that's going to make it grow the most are those specific bicep curls where I'm exercising that. Same with your fat burning ability. So then if you want to maximize your body's ability to burn glucose at high performance, you want to spend quite a bit of time exercising in this zone so that your body gets used to burning sugar at those rapid paces. So this is not to say that working outside of these two zones don't play any significant role. They do. I'm just talking about a very specific idea around training. So now that we've covered the basics, let's have a look here at how this works out. So green represents your fat burning, orange represents your glucose burning, and then you'll see as your intensity goes up, here as your intensity, your fuel source changes. So at about, that's your zone 2 over there, we're using mostly fat, a little bit of sugar. Zone 3 and 4, the mix that I was talking about, and then getting into zone 5 where you're mostly using glucose and very little fat. So another thing is diet plays a massive part in this, and I'm going to go to another diagram here. So this is a low carbohydrate diet or a high fat diet, and this is a high carbohydrate diet. So I want to show you the difference, and this is your oxidation rate, or your body's ability to use fat as a fuel in your body. So you'll see, and this is also your intensity of exercise. So you'll see in a high carbohydrate diet, the maximum level sort of gets to the starting point of a low carb diet. So you're not really utilizing fat very well because your diet is glucose strong, and it's much easier for your body to use glucose as fuel. When a low carb diet, you are forcing your body to use fat as a fuel. Therefore, like I was talking about earlier, your bicep curl, it is increasing your body's ability to oxidize fat. And the great thing is that in exercise now, you can see at about 75% of max, you are mostly using fat as a fuel, and it's highly superior to a high carbohydrate diet. And in essence, what this means is you can go faster for longer. And that's why this is important. So what do I want to do in Comrades Marathon? I want to go faster for longer. If I'm on a high carbohydrate diet, I'm going to really have to put a lot of sugars into my system. I'm going to have to get my nutrition spot on to keep that going. But that's the beauty between the two different systems. Your aerobic system and your anaerobic system. So we can develop these independently. And I'm going to show you an example of the black zone in running. So these are two identical runs a week apart. It's a 10K along the beachfront, a flat route. And this one, what I decided to do is say, okay, let me go as fast as I can at this particular point. I was already on a high-fat diet, so I was quite limited, and I didn't. All I had in terms of glucose, what was stored in my muscles. I did a 53, 522, not a super fast run, but I'll show you how I pushed it. So you'll see here, my pace sort of increased a little bit. That's the blue line, and my heart rate went all the way. I only stayed in zone 2 from about 2 kilometers, and then after that, I was in the higher heart rate zone, except my little viewpoints where they dropped. But at 7Ks, I could no longer maintain that pace. I had to drop my pace. Why? Because I had used up or utilized all the glucose that was stored in my muscle. So I had to drop the pace so that my body could go down and drop my heart rate so that I could go down and start utilizing more fat to keep my pace up. Let me show you how that looks. So I spent only 10 minutes in my best fat burning zone, and then I spent most of my time in zone 3, which was utilizing glucose as well as utilizing fat, and then also zone 4, utilizing mostly glucose and a little bit of fat. And then I was only able to last in zone 5, which is mostly using glucose, and that's where my blowout occurred, for 5 minutes 22, because I had already used all my glucose in these zones when I was running here. So overall, yes, I have a better result. But have I benefited? Has my body benefited best from this exercise? And I'll say no. Why? Because what do I want? I want to be able to oxidize fat better so that I can go longer. I also want to be able to use my glucose burning ability better. So spending time here, and I want to be able to benefit in terms of speed and performance. So let me show you another run. So you'll see here the pace is very different. So it's 6:43, which is more than a minute slower per kilometer on my last one. But I'll show you how this is actually a better session than the one before. So you'll see here, and this is how also aerobically I can see I'm pretty unfit. So my heart rate stayed at a constant zone 2 level. So I made sure that I did that by decreasing my pace as my heart rate started to go up. I just decreased and decreased and decreased until I got to 2 kilometers to go. So you'll see here 5:55 in zone 2, 6:31 in zone 2, 6:38, and so it goes up all the way to 8 kilometers in zone 2. And you can see how my pace had to drop off. Why? Because my body is not great at burning fat at this particular point. So I couldn't keep up a higher rate of exercise. So what I did here is I exercised in 8 kilometers, my zone 2 as best as I could. Then the last 2 kilometers, I put the pedal to the metal. I did some fast and slows, getting into my high performance zone. So I was running like 4:30 pace. And then even my slower stuff was, let's see, about 6 minutes was my slower per kilometer. And what I did here is I pushed into those red zones. So let's have a look here. So you can see here, I spent a significant amount of time exercising my body's ability to burn fat, my short twitch fiber muscles, my ability to endure. Even the zone 3 here, it's really me. Every time I popped into zone 3, I slowed down, I slowed down, I slowed down. So this is lower zone 3 on the chart. Now, this is the interesting part. So when I got to my high intensity section, I hadn't used the glucose in my muscles yet. So I was able to perform 9 minutes in zone 5. So this is my optimal. I'm using all the glucose in my muscle. I'm doing high speed. I'm performing well. I am exercising my VO2 max, which is my body's ability to move red blood cells to the muscle. So I am exercising this system very well. So let's compare the two. So in the quicker run, I did less time in zone 5. So my VO2 max, I had less effect on my VO2 max. and I had less effect or training on my body's ability to burn fat. Where in the slower run, even though it perceived to be easier, and like if my friends were watching me, they'd be like, yo, this oak is going like a snail. What I did do is I increased my body's ability to oxidize fat, and I increased my body's ability to use glucose as a fuel, and I also increased my speed, performance, and VO2 max. So this here is what I call the black hole. So where you're using a mix of fuel, you're sort of developing your fat burning ability, and you're sort of using glucose as a fuel. So you're not really 100% using glucose and 100% using fats as fuel. Why am I doing that? And I'll go back to this. Because when I'm running Comrades, I want to be running at 85% of my max, using mostly fat as a fuel at that 85%, and being able to top up a little bit of carbohydrates so that I still am using a bit of glucose, but my ability to use fat as fuel is far superior to someone that has been training on a high carbohydrate diet. So therefore, that is why I am quite sticky when even if you go onto my Strava, you'll see I've been writing up detailed reports on how I'm doing it, but I'm trying to stick in best fat utilization, best glucose utilization. Like that bicep I spoke about earlier, I want to exercise these zones well, and how I amplify that is by making sure that my eating is also high fat. So I'm amplifying my fat oxidization. And let me give you, so what happened last year in my personal best marathon, there was no such thing as a wall. I kept expecting it to come, like, oh, I'm going to blow out any moment. Let me just get to 30Ks, got to 30Ks, okay. Let me get to 35Ks, got to 35Ks, still wasn't there. I must say the only time I really struggled was probably the last 2 kilometers, but at that stage you're so close, you can just fuss bait and hold on, and I just stuck a whole bunch of sugar down my mouth, and it sort of like got me through to the end of that race. But I exercised mostly at a high heart rate intensity. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful. If you do have any questions or queries around this, give me a shout, and I'd be glad to answer.